I remember the exact moment my perfect life began to fall apart. It was a Thursday afternoon in early October, the kind of crisp autumn day where the air feels clean and the future feels wide open. I was standing in my kitchen in Seattle, holding a small white envelope that had just arrived in the mail. My fiance, Ryan Mitchell, had sent it from his office with a simple note written on the front. For the woman I'm going to marry. Inside the envelope were 2 tickets to Paris. We were supposed to leave in 3 weeks. At that moment, I believed I was the luckiest woman alive. Ryan and I had been together for 4 years. We met at a charity event where I was volunteering and he was giving a speech about his tech startup. He was charming, confident, and the kind of man who seemed to know exactly where his life was going, and somehow, he chose me. By the time he proposed, everyone around us said the same thing. You two are perfect together. I believed it too. But if I'm being honest now, looking back at everything that happened, there were warning signs everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. The biggest one had a name. Her name was Olivia Parker. Olivia had been my best friend since college. We met freshman year at Stanford and quickly became inseparable. She was bold where I was careful, loud where I was quiet, and fearless in ways I secretly admired. If I'm honest, Olivia had always been the kind of woman who turned heads the second she walked into a room. Tall, stunning, magnetic. People gravitated toward her, men especially. But she always joked that I was the stable one, the responsible one, the one who had everything figured out. For years, that dynamic worked for us. She dated exciting men who broke her heart, while I built a stable relationship with Ryan, or at least, that's what I thought was happening. When Ryan proposed to me on a snowy night in December, Olivia was the first person I called. She screamed so loudly on the phone that I had to pull it away from my ear. "Oh my God, Emma, you're getting married!" she shouted. 30 minutes later, she showed up at my door with champagne and cupcakes, and we celebrated until midnight. At the time, I thought her excitement meant she was happy for me. Now I know something else. Envy can sometimes wear the same smile as happiness. Over the next few months, wedding planning consumed my life. I had spreadsheets, color palettes, venue tours, and a Pinterest board that had grown completely out of control. Olivia was there for all of it. Dress shopping, cake tastings, bridal shower planning. If someone had asked me then who I trusted most in the world, the answer would have been simple: Ryan and Olivia. Which makes what happened next feel almost unbelievable, because betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the people you never thought would hurt you. About 3 months before the wedding, Ryan started working later than usual. At first it made sense. His company had just landed a massive investment deal, and the pressure was intense. Late meetings, business dinners, last-minute travel. I tried to be supportive. Whenever he came home exhausted, I'd make him dinner and listen while he vented about investors and deadlines. But something about him felt different, distant, distracted. Sometimes he'd glance at his phone and quickly turn the screen away. One night I finally asked, "Everything okay?" He smiled and kissed my forehead. "Just work stress." I believed him, because when you love someone, your brain automatically fills in the gaps with the best possible explanation. Around that same time, Olivia started coming over more often. At first it was normal, then it became frequent. Sometimes she'd stop by when Ryan was already home. Other times she'd arrive before I did, claiming she was just in the neighborhood. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly. But back then, I was blind. One Friday night, the 3 of us went out for drinks downtown to celebrate Ryan closing his latest funding round. I remember laughing a lot that night, but I also remember something else, a moment that lasted maybe 2 seconds. Olivia leaned across the table to grab a glass of wine, and Ryan looked at her. Not the way a man looks at his fiance's friend, but the way a man looks at a woman he wants. I noticed it instantly. My stomach tightened. Then the moment passed. Ryan turned back to me and asked if I wanted dessert, and I convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing. That's the dangerous thing about trust. Once you've given it to someone, your mind will do almost anything to protect it, even ignore the truth. 2 weeks later, the truth walked straight into my life and destroyed everything. It happened on a Tuesday. I had left work early because I was feeling sick. I didn't tell Ryan I was coming home. I thought I'd surprise him with dinner. Instead, I opened the front door and heard voices upstairs. Ryan's voice. And Olivia's. At first I smiled, assuming she had just stopped by again. But then I heard something else. A laugh, a quiet, intimate laugh, and suddenly something inside me knew. Without even seeing them, without any proof, I felt it. I slowly walked up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The bedroom door was slightly open. Through that small crack, I saw the moment my life ended. Ryan and Olivia were in my bed, together. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world didn't explode the way people imagine when their life falls apart. There was no dramatic music, no screaming, no instant rage. Instead, everything became painfully quiet. My hand was still resting on the bedroom door when it creaked open just a little more, and suddenly they saw me. Ryan froze first. His entire body went rigid, like someone had hit pause on him. Olivia turned a second later, her eyes widening the moment they landed on my face. For 3 seconds, none of us moved. 3 seconds where every memory of the last 4 years flashed through my head like shattered glass. The proposal, the wedding plans, the late-night conversations about our future, the house we talked about buying, the kids we wanted. And standing there in that doorway, I realized something terrifying. Every single one of those memories had just been poisoned. Ryan was the first one to speak. "Emma." His voice cracked like he didn't even recognize it. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My brain hadn't caught up with what my eyes were seeing. Olivia quickly grabbed the blanket and pulled it up around herself, as if that small piece of fabric could somehow hide what she had just done. "Emma, this isn't what it looks like," she said quickly. That sentence, the most ridiculous sentence in the history of betrayal. I finally found my voice. "Then explain it," I said quietly. Neither of them answered. Ryan swung his legs off the bed and stood up, grabbing his shirt from the floor. "Emma, please just let me explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud. If anything, it sounded too calm. The kind of calm that happens when someone is in shock. "You were in my bed," I said slowly, "with my best friend." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing nervously like he was trying to find the right script for a disaster he hadn't planned for. Olivia didn't look at me. She just stared down at the blanket wrapped around her body. "Emma?" Ryan said again. "Stop saying my name," I snapped. For the first time, anger finally broke through the numbness. "Just stop." Silence filled the room again. My eyes moved from Ryan to Olivia. I had known this woman for 10 years, 10 years of birthdays, late night talks, shared secrets, and promises that we would always have each other's backs. And now she couldn't even look me in the eye. "Since when?" I asked. Ryan hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Ryan," I said coldly. "Since when?" 2 months, he finally said. The words felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. 2 months. That meant it started while I was choosing wedding venues, while Olivia was helping me pick out my dress, while Ryan was promising me forever. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because sometimes your brain breaks in strange ways when reality becomes too much to process. 2 months, I repeated. Olivia finally spoke. "It just happened." I turned toward her so fast she flinched. "It just happened," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You accidentally slept with my fiance?" "Emma, please," she said. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." That sentence made something inside me snap. I stepped closer to the bed. "You're my best friend," I said. She looked up at me with tears forming in her eyes. "No," I said sharply. "You were my best friend." Ryan stepped between us like he thought I might attack her. "Emma, this is my fault too." I looked at him like I was seeing a stranger. "No," I said. "This is both of your faults." Neither of them argued because they knew it was true. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. I turned toward the door. "Emma, wait," Ryan said quickly. I stopped but didn't turn around. "We need to talk about this." I let out a slow breath. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is, he said desperately. The wedding? I finally turned back toward them. You think there's still a wedding after this? Ryan looked like he had no idea how to answer that question. And that's when something strange happened. Olivia spoke again. And what she said next was the moment I realized my best friend hadn't just betrayed me. She had replaced me. Emma, she said softly. Ryan glanced at her nervously, but she kept going. Ryan and I didn't plan for this, but we didn't mean for you to find out this way. The words hit me like ice water. You mean for me to find out? I said slowly. Ryan looked panicked now. Olivia, but she kept talking. We didn't want to hurt you, she said. I stared at her in disbelief. You're already hurting me, I replied. She swallowed hard. But Ryan and I, we have feelings for each other. The room went completely silent. Ryan didn't deny it. That silence confirmed everything. I felt the last piece of my heart break right there in that bedroom. 4 years of love, 10 years of friendship. Gone in a single afternoon. I nodded slowly. Then I said something neither of them expected. Okay. Ryan frowned. Okay? Yes, I said calmly. I looked directly at both of them. You two clearly deserve each other. They both looked confused, almost suspicious of how calm I had suddenly become. But the truth was simple. Something inside me had just shut down. I walked toward the door again. Emma, where are you going? Ryan asked. I paused in the hallway, then said the last words I ever spoke to them as the person they used to know. I hope it was worth it. And with that, I walked out of the house. What I didn't know yet was that the worst part of their betrayal hadn't even happened. And the karma that was coming for them was far more brutal than anything I could have planned myself. The first night after everything happened, I didn't go home. I drove for almost an hour without really thinking about where I was going. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers had turned white. But I barely noticed. My mind kept replaying the same image over and over again, Ryan and Olivia in my bed. Every memory felt contaminated now. Every laugh, every promise, every moment I thought meant something. By the time I finally stopped driving, I was sitting outside my older sister's apartment across town. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask any questions. She just pulled me into a hug. And that's when I finally broke. For the next 2 weeks, I lived in a fog. I canceled the wedding venue, returned the dress, called vendors, explained the situation to family members who were shocked, angry, and confused all at once. Every single conversation felt humiliating. But nothing hurt as much as what happened next. About 3 weeks after I walked out of that house, I received a message from someone I hadn't expected, Olivia. Her name appeared on my phone while I was sitting at the kitchen table. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. Then I opened it. The message was short. I know you probably hate me, but I thought you should hear it from me first. Ryan and I are officially together now. For a second, I couldn't even process what I was reading. Officially together. As if they were announcing some kind of normal relationship. As if the last 10 years of friendship meant absolutely nothing. Another message followed a few seconds later. I never meant to hurt you, but we didn't plan this. We just fell in love. I laughed out loud when I read that, not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. People who betray you love using that phrase. We didn't plan this. Like emotions somehow erase responsibility. Like loyalty stops mattering the moment attraction appears. I didn't respond to her message. Not that day, not ever. Instead, I blocked both of them. Ryan tried to call several times that same week. I ignored every call. Eventually, the silence between us became permanent. But even when you cut people out of your life, it doesn't mean you stop hearing about them. Mutual friends talk. Social media exists. And karma has a strange way of unfolding slowly enough for everyone to watch. About 2 months after the breakup, I ran into an old coworker of Ryan's at a coffee shop downtown. He recognized me immediately. Emma? He said cautiously. I forced a small smile. Hey. We talked awkwardly for a minute before he finally said something that caught me off guard. I'm really sorry about what happened. I shrugged. It is what it is. He hesitated, then lowered his voice slightly. Ryan's been different at work lately. That got my attention. What do you mean? I asked. He glanced around the cafe before answering. Stressed, distracted, missing deadlines. His investors are starting to get frustrated. I raised an eyebrow. Ryan had always been obsessed with his career. The idea that he was struggling at work felt almost unbelievable. Is everything okay with the company? I asked. The coworker shrugged. Hard to say. But things definitely aren't as smooth as they used to be. I didn't say anything else about it. But later that night, curiosity got the better of me. For the first time since the breakup, I searched Ryan's name online. What I found was interesting. His company had delayed a major product launch. A few investors had publicly questioned management decisions. Nothing catastrophic yet, but the cracks were there. And something else caught my attention too, Olivia's social media. Apparently, she and Ryan weren't exactly hiding their relationship. Photos, dinner dates, weekend trips, smiling selfies, and captions that made my stomach turn. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. But the right person makes everything worth it. The comments were full of people congratulating them, oblivious to how that relationship actually started. I closed the app. For a moment, anger bubbled up inside me again. But then something strange happened. Instead of feeling jealous, I felt relieved. Because the more I looked at their perfect online life, the more I realized something important. People who build relationships on betrayal usually carry that same pattern forward. Trust doesn't magically appear just because two cheaters decide they're in love. Slowly, over the next several months, the cracks in their perfect relationship began to grow. First, it was small things, subtle signs. Ryan stopped appearing in Olivia's photos as often. Then the captions changed, less perfect couple energy, more vague quotes about stress and growth. The real turning point came about 6 months later. The day I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from since the breakup, Ryan. And what he wrote in that message proved one thing beyond any doubt. Karma had finally started knocking on their door. And this time, neither of them could ignore it. The message from Ryan appeared late one evening. I almost didn't open it. Part of me wanted to leave him to his own mess, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. Emma, I messed up. Everything's falling apart. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. And then I did something I rarely ever allow myself to do. I smiled, not because I wanted him back, not because I missed him, because finally the universe was catching up to them. I didn't respond. I let the message sit. Days passed. Then more news started reaching me through mutual friends and public channels. Ryan's startup, the one he had been obsessed with for years, was collapsing. Investors were pulling out. Employees were leaving. Deals that had seemed guaranteed were falling through one after another. The media began covering the story, not kindly. Headlines painted him as reckless, distracted, and completely incapable of managing his company while juggling a new secret relationship. Olivia's so-called happy life wasn't much better. The lavish trips and perfect social media posts were beginning to crack. A video leaked of her throwing a massive tantrum in a restaurant when Ryan failed to show up for a dinner she had planned. Comments about her behavior went viral among people who had once praised her poise and confidence. I didn't gloat. I wasn't celebrating. Not exactly. But there was a satisfaction in watching the truth unfold. Betrayal has a price. And they were paying it in full. It didn't stop there. Mutual friends whispered about arguments, nights spent sleeping in separate rooms, and an underlying tension neither could hide. Ryan was furious at Olivia for not being as supportive as he imagined, and Olivia was furious at Ryan for, well, being Ryan. And then the final blow came. One ordinary Friday, Ryan's company officially declared bankruptcy. Investors pulled out entirely. Employees left in droves. The dream he had built for years collapsed almost overnight. And Olivia? She was nowhere to be found. The person who had once called herself my best friend vanished from social media for a week after the collapse. The lifestyle they had flaunted, the future they had promised themselves, it all evaporated in the blink of an eye. I remember reading a post from a mutual friend around that time. Funny how karma has a way of finding the people who think they can do whatever they want. And I thought, yes, exactly. Watching them struggle, I realized something important. Life isn't fair. People can betray you, ruin your happiness, and think they'll get away with it. But consequences eventually catch up. Always. Over the next few months, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. The heartbreak was still there, lingering, but it was no longer all-consuming. I returned to work, focused on personal goals I had pushed aside, and reconnected with friends who had truly mattered. And with each step forward, I felt stronger, freer, and more certain of one undeniable truth. You cannot control other people, but you can control yourself. Meanwhile, Ryan and Olivia remained entangled in their own mess. Arguments, failed projects, public embarrassment. It became impossible for them to maintain the fantasy of a perfect couple. I didn't need to intervene. Karma was doing its work beautifully. And the most satisfying part, they finally learned something I had known all along. Betrayal leaves scars not just on the victim, but on the betrayer too. The universe has a way of balancing the scales. It doesn't hurry, it doesn't negotiate, but it never forgets. Ryan and Olivia's lives had become a series of missteps that no one could ignore. Their once perfect facade had crumbled entirely, and the truth about what they had done was no longer something that could be whispered behind closed doors. It was everywhere. It started subtly. Mutual friends began sharing stories they had kept quiet out of loyalty. People they had betrayed quietly started speaking up. Rumors that had been carefully managed online became undeniable when insiders began posting screenshots and proof of their infidelity. Olivia's innocent social media persona cracked when old messages leaked showing her encouraging Ryan, even planning private meets, while I was trusting her completely. Ryan's career took another hit. Investors, frustrated and embarrassed, publicly criticized his management and decision-making. The bankruptcy wasn't just financial, it was reputational. The press painted him as reckless and untrustworthy, a man who couldn't manage relationships or business. Every board meeting, every interview, every social media post became a reminder of the collapse he had caused, all while chasing a selfish desire. But it wasn't just professional ruin. They were personally unraveling. Arguments erupted constantly. Small disagreements exploded into full-blown fights. Olivia, who had once been so confident, became defensive and paranoid. Ryan, who had once seemed untouchable, became short-tempered and insecure. The chemistry they thought would sustain them vanished, leaving only bitterness. Then, the final truth came out, a public revelation that left everyone shocked. One evening, a mutual friend who had grown tired of their games published a detailed account online, showing timelines, screenshots, and evidence of the betrayal. It wasn't just about a fling, it proved premeditated deception over months. Olivia's carefully crafted story of "we just fell in love" was exposed as a lie. Ryan had knowingly allowed it to happen while still promising me a future. The internet exploded. Social media comments, news articles, even podcasts covered the story. Former friends and colleagues expressed disgust. People who had once admired them were now calling them manipulative, deceitful, and selfish. Every post Ryan or Olivia made was met with skepticism and ridicule. Every attempt to explain themselves failed. I saw it all from a distance. I didn't respond. I didn't gloat. I simply watched. Because this was what justice looked like. Not a dramatic revenge plot. Not an explosive confrontation. Simply the undeniable truth catching up to the people who deserved it most. Months later, I ran into Olivia in public for the first time since the breakup. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, and the confidence that had once defined her was gone. Ryan was nowhere in sight. We made eye contact. She looked like she wanted to say something. I didn't. I just nodded and walked away. It was the last closure I needed. Because the most important truth I realized through this entire ordeal was that betrayal does not only harm the victim, it destroys the betrayer in ways they often cannot control. The lies, the manipulation, the secrecy, they always catch up. They always leave a trail of destruction. And in the end, the people who hurt you the most are often the ones who end up losing everything they thought they had. I rebuilt my life from the wreckage. I started traveling again, focusing on my career, and opening myself to genuine relationships. Trust, once broken, became something I guarded carefully. But I also learned that resilience comes from surviving, not revenge. Meanwhile, Ryan and Olivia remained trapped in the consequences of their choices. They had stolen what wasn't theirs, and in doing so, they lost everything that could have mattered: respect, trust, and any claim to a life they thought they could take from me. The lesson was clear. You cannot cheat karma. You cannot cheat consequences. And you cannot escape the truth. Life had handed them the lesson they refused to learn the easy way. And for the first time in years, I felt a quiet, unshakable peace. Because the person I trusted most, who betrayed me, had been outmatched. Not by me, but by reality itself.